Hey y'all, Chelsea and Danny here.
Enjoy this episode of Today's Homeowner here on YouTube.
Sometimes there's just one wall in the way of making your house perfect. This week, we're taking it out.
Welcome to Today's Homeowner with Danny Lipford. Get ready for a half hour full of projects, tips, and ideas to help you improve your home.
Welcome to the show this week. Now this is a project that many homeowners contemplate, and that's removing a wall in their home. Now in this case, the homeowners have a fairly nice sized family room. They spend a lot of time in this room. They need a little more space. Now to get that space, we're removing this wall so that we can incorporate the family room into this room, which is a small office that the homeowners say they hardly ever use. Now this will be a tricky wall to remove because this ceiling is flat. The ceiling in the adjacent family room has a vaulted section on it. So how are we going to create a nice smooth transition here, and how are we going to support all of the weight that's being supported by this wall now? We'll show you those tricks in this week's show and show you how you can remove almost any wall in your home. Stay with us. Welcome back to the show. It really doesn't take long to remove an interior wall like this, but as you can see, it can create quite a mess. So the first step is adequate cover-up. Lightweight plastic sheeting and masking tape are perfect for covering up areas where we don't want dust to penetrate. Before we could begin removing the wall, Mark and his crew took down the crown molding and other trim so that it could be saved for reuse later. The moldings were carefully pried off the wall, and then the nails were pulled out of the back side of the trim to preserve the face. Cuts along the edges of the wall ensure that the drywall that was being removed would separate cleanly from the drywall that stays. All of this prep work allows us to get very aggressive with the removal of the rest of the drywall. With most of our framing exposed, we can now concentrate on how we're going to support all of the load that's currently being supported by this wall, and that work starts in the attic. Earlier here in the attic, we had our guys remove the insulation that's in this affected area. Now, this flat area is the small office that we'll be working with, and then this is the back side of the vaulted ceiling over in the family room. Now, what we'll have to do here is actually cut back on each of these ceiling joists to allow the beam to fit in right in here. That way, it will tie into the beam and support all of the weight that's represented here. Now, on this side, with the joist running this way, we really have no weight to worry about on this side of the ceiling. So our beam will run along here. This will tie into that, and we can take the entire wall out. But another wall we'll be removing is this wall that tees off of it that currently has a doorway in it. Now, when you have a situation like this in your attic where you see two ceiling joists that sit together on top of a wall, that's definitely a load-bearing wall and something that has to be handled very carefully. In this case, we'll be running another beam that'll tie in to this beam and allow these ceiling joists to be tied into it, supporting all of this, and again, allowing us to remove that wall section as well. Now the next step here is a little more demolition. To support the ceiling, a temporary wall is set up on each side of the office doorway so the original studs and header can be removed. We cut back and remove a foot or so of the office ceiling so that we can get our beam in later. The den's tray ceiling is supported by a long 2x4 nailed to the top of the angled ceiling joist and several other 2x4s that tied into the roof rafters temporarily. The guys next mark the joists so that they can be cut off to accommodate the beam. The overlapping joists at the door of the office are also cut back to make room for the beam that will support them. With the ceiling joists supported, the rest of the wall can be removed. In several places, the studs have to be notched to release electrical lines, but eventually the last of the wall is gone. The first of the two laminate beams is brought in, lifted into place, resting on the walls at either end. Nails are shot through the beam into the angled joist, giving them the permanent support they need. The second beam goes into the tight space that remains, and it's nailed off to the first beam. A pair of 2x12s nailed together will support the joist where the office door used to be. The 2x12s are nailed to the laminate beam, and the joists are attached to it with metal joist hangers before the temporary walls below are removed. With both wood beams in place and all of our wood framing on our walls removed, the homeowners will be able to see a big difference in these areas once they get home this afternoon. But they've got a lot of work to do because they're handling all of the electrical rerouting of the wires as well as the phone lines that were in all of these walls. So they've got a lot to do, as well as the painting and putting down their hardwood floor as the job progresses along. But for our part, we need to square off the rest of our drywall that we have on the ceiling so that we can install the new drywall and start the finishing process. Now, both ceilings in both areas here are a textured ceiling, a medium texture that a lot of people call popcorn. So what we'll be doing is matching that texture, and then the homeowner will repaint both rooms to make sure that it blends in well. You know, a ceiling can really define what a room looks like, and when we come back, we'll continue on this process and jump over to another project and show you how we're replacing an old acoustic tile ceiling with drywall. It really updates the area. Stay with us.
It's time to pick up a few tricks of the trade from Danny and home repair expert Joe Truini in this week's Simple Solution.
Sometimes it's easier to repair something around the house than it is to replace it.
Well, this is a perfectly good example of that, Danny. I had the shower curtain rod, which broke recently, and the way this one works, it's under tension. You telescope it out until it's a little longer than the width of the walls, and you kind of wedge it in place. Now, the other option is to use the kind that has the sockets like you have in your clothes closet that you screw to either wall.
Yeah, but you have to drill through ceramic most of the time.
Right, you have to drill into the ceramic, then if you move them, you got the holes to deal with. So I thought this would be a quicker and easier way to repair it.
Okay.
What I did earlier is I drilled 2 holes through both of these rods after I used this piece of tape to sort of mark the proper length. And now I'm going to just put in a couple of stainless steel screws, and you want to use, these are self-tapping sheet metal screws, and you want to make sure you use stainless steel because you don't want them to rust. So I drilled a 1/8 inch diameter pilot hole, and I'll just spin in these screws, and what this will do is it'll lock it in position.
Well,
now,
you'll have to make sure it's right then.
Yeah,
you only get one
well,
chance.
we're going to find out in a second. Now you're pretty much committed to this length once you lock in those screws, but I think, you know, if I measured correctly, I think this will be okay. So you just set it in there, and pull it down, and look at that. You see this one, in our first try, we got it, and I can remove the tape. And that just, a little bit of tension holds it in place, and it's as good as new.
So instead of $12 to $15 for a rod, you've invested what, 50 cents?
That's about it.
Wow, what a great transition between our 2 rooms here on our ceiling area. Now, this used to be 2 rooms, but we removed the wall between the 2 rooms to create this large area only 3 days ago, so things are moving along real nicely. Actually, as soon as we finished our framing and the installation of our large beam that's supporting the weight along here, we immediately put up our drywall pieces, both on the ceiling as well as a few wall voids that we had where the wall was removed. After that, our finisher was out on the job, mixing up several different joint compounds, including some that were very fast drying to allow him to put several coats on in one day. So he finished all of his taping, all of his mudding, and created a nice slick surface, then came in with his texture gun and hopper gun and sprayed everything to create this nice medium texture that really blends everything in. He also had to do a little texturing on the walls. The original walls have a slight texture called orange peel finish or splatter finish, and we applied the same on any area that we had the drywall compound so that it would match that texture, so that when the homeowners who are doing all of the painting themselves, all they'll have to do is clean the walls slightly, a little bit of sanding, and they're ready to apply their latex paint they've selected. Now, you know, drywall surfaces, particularly ceilings, are the most common ceiling material used in residential homes throughout the country. But occasionally, a do-it-yourself product like the acoustic tiles are found in some houses where someone's tried to do it themselves and install some of the tiles. Some homeowners don't like this look very much. Recently, we worked with some homeowners to improve one of their ceilings. This home had some great open spaces, but the tile ceiling and exposed beams gave it a very dated look. The orange carpet combined with inadequate lighting also made it very dark. Since the owners had decided to replace the flooring as well as the ceiling, we rolled up the old carpet before we started the demolition of the ceiling. The artificial exposed beams were actually just hollow styrofoam pieces wrapped around 2x4s which were nailed to the ceiling. So removing them was quick and easy. Ceiling tiles were simply stapled to the framing above so that they came out very quickly as well. Strapping had been nailed to the underside of the ceiling joist to support the small 12-inch tiles. So rather than removing it, We'll screw the new drywall directly to the strapping, but that means removing a lot of staples. While the ceiling was open, we took advantage of the opportunity to upgrade the room's lighting with new recessed fixtures around the perimeter. With the wiring complete, we were ready to begin hanging drywall. The boards were attached in full sheets and then cut out where the recessed lights were made using a rotary saw. At this rate, the ceiling was recovered as quickly as the old one came down. Our drywall finisher went to work next, this time creating a smooth ceiling surface. With the addition of crown molding and a little paint, our work was done. With the ceiling being painted a bright white and all the new recessed light fixtures that have been installed, it's really increased the brightness of this whole room. Now, another thing the homeowners had the painters take care of is to paint the old dark grass cloth that's been on these walls for years. It took quite a few coats of paint in order to cover the grass cloth, but the nice bright yellow color really works out perfectly. Now, along the same lines, the homeowners did a great job in the selection of the hardwood floor color. This being a lighter color, more of a blonde finish, certainly helps to brighten everything up and definitely helps to update this room overall. This room really has changed a lot. Now, when we come back, we'll be out on the other job location where we're removing a wall between two rooms that really has created a nice wide open space. Stay with us.
Now let's join Danny at the Home Center to check out this week's best new product, brought to you by the Home Depot.
When you're in the market for a lawnmower, there's a lot to choose from. But we recently found one from Toro called the Recycler that has some pretty neat features. First of all, a lot of people are kind of intimidated by a lawnmower because it's so hard to crank sometimes. Well, this one comes with a 2-year guarantee that it will crank. And one of the reasons they can extend that kind of guarantee, the key start. You simply put your key in, has an electric start, makes it a lot easier to mow that lawn. And to keep the charger charged, it has a little battery charger that comes with it that hooks in right below where the key goes in. And it also has the manual start if you need to use that for any reason. Now, some other features, the discharge bag is if you decide to recycle and use your grass clippings for a compost pile with no tools at all, you can unclip this to be able to dump it in your compost pile. Also, this one has a special blade they call the atomic blade that has a number of unique notches in the blade itself that really minces up the grass clippings so that they can return right back to the root system of your grass. Now, also to make it even easier to take care of that lawn mowing task, it's self-propelled, but this one gauges itself to your personal walking pace. Here, depending on how far in you push it, it'll control just how fast the mower goes. So with all these features, it really makes sense to consider a mower like this, and cost around $400. Welcome back to the show. Now, we're back on the project where we're removing a wall between two different rooms, and you can see exactly where the wall used to be right here. One of the things the homeowner is planning on doing himself is all of the electrical work that's involved in this, because you can imagine with electrical outlets and switches on both sides of this wall, there were a lot of wires that had to be relocated. Some of that required a little work up in the attic. But a great idea that the homeowner had is to supply a floor plug. Now, a floor plug in an area that's so big and so open like this is a great idea because you hate to have any cord running across the finished floor. Now, in order to get power to this particular floor outlet, he had to remove several sections of subfloor in order to get his wire back over to a wall outlet he installed there on the wall where the old wall void was present. So this works out great, makes a lot of sense, but the homeowner's got a lot of other work to do, including a lot of painting and flooring. If you want help painting, throw a party. Obviously not a black tie affair, but this homeowner discovered that getting a few friends and family in on the masking, taping, and painting made the job go quickly. When it came time for the hardwood floor, the owner opted to let the flooring supplier handle the installation instead of doing the work himself. Now, this is the kind of decision that each homeowner has to make for themselves, based not only on their skill level, but also on the amount of time they have to give to the project. I would love to take all the credit for how nice this room turned out, but homeowner Monty Willis did a lot of work around here. Monty, I know you've been working on this. How did everything work out for you as far as your part of the job?
Well, it's been a really interesting project. We did a lot of work ourselves. We painted. We were going to put floors down, but decided that was best left to the professionals.
Yeah, that can be an expensive mistake if things
yeah.
get off a little bit there.
Yeah, and once you watch those guys starting to put it down, then you really realize you made a good choice. Kind of like the ceiling. I mean, that would have been, you know, look, you think just knocking a wall out's no big deal, but it's a load-bearing wall, and didn't want to think about it coming down on me.
You want it to stay where it is right
I like
now.
it up there.
That's perfect. And the painting, I understand you got a little help on the painting. Some friends and family
Oh, yeah.
kind of almost turned it into a party. That's a good way to do it.
Oh yeah, it's kind of the Tom Sawyer effect.
Well, you know, the overall effect of removing this wall that was right in here really makes a difference, because I understand you really didn't use this area of the house very much, and now it works out perfect, and you really pick up a lot of more light in here and a lot more of the view that you have here.
Well, we actually doubled our view of the water. I mean, we have a home on the water, but you know, we didn't have a really great view from the living room. Mm-hmm. And now it's twice as much as it was, and it's even more. It's just great.
I can see your wife and your family spending a lot of time here, drinking coffee, maybe in the afternoon, having dinner and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we come in here in the mornings and have coffee, and we've actually had dinner on this table for 2 days in a row, which we haven't in the last 10 years, so that's...
Well, that's perfect. All of your part of the work turned out well. Everything looked good, and I know that you're bringing the furniture in, and when we come back, we'll show you everything complete in this area of the home.
Let's head outside for Around the Yard with Danny and lawn and garden expert Tricia Craven-Worley. Brought to you by TimberTech Composite Decking. Less work, more life.
Tricia, it looks like there will be no more angel food cakes around your house.
Oh, well, Danny, I do have another angel food cake pan, but I've created a heavenly location for these plants.
That's a great idea to have a little greenery while you're sitting around the patio table.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, you can buy planters like this at your local nursery, but what I decided to do was do it more economically. I took this angel food cake pan, and be sure it's an angel food cake pan, not a bundt pan that's similar, because with an angel food cake pan you can take out the center. And what I did was I just took it apart, used a hacksaw, cut it off so that I could get the stand through that opening, and then also, just for safety purposes, I also took some tape and wrapped it around the raw edge.
It's a good idea. Now, what about your selection of plants here?
Well, I decided, because we're at a table, and of course we like to eat at this table, to fill it with some herbs.
Okay, that's a great idea then, so that while you're having a salad or whatever, you can add to it.
Absolutely. Wouldn't that be fun to be able to just snip off some herbs, just what felt good? And you know what? I am putting these in, and I don't think I'm going to keep them here a long time. So I didn't drill any holes in the bottom. But if you're going to be using the planter, this idea long term, you probably do want to drill some holes there, because you don't want the plants to get waterlogged. And then it's also important that if you are going to do that, that when you do water it, you don't water it on the table, because the water is going to go everywhere. So just take out the pipe, take it off, water it on the patio, and then bring it back.
I am kind of getting a craving for a salad. This type of project is very gratifying, because there's such a big difference between the start of the project and the completed project. Now, the homeowner, Monty, was pretty smart in how he really helped us, and he took on things that he knew he could handle without taking up too much of his time or going above his skill level. And when you have things like removing a load-bearing wall or refinishing drywall, installation of an expensive hardwood floor, that's better left for the professionals. And when we started this project, we had 2 separate areas, and once the wall moved down, it incorporated everything into one. This area was an area he mentioned he hardly used in the 10 years that he lived in this house. Now with the breakfast table here, I'm sure they'll be using it a lot more. And the main area, still plenty of seating so that everybody can enjoy the big screen TV. And with it being located adjacent to the kitchen, I'll bet they use this room quite a bit. I hope you enjoyed seeing this transformation, and I hope you'll be back next week. I'm Danny Lipford. Next week, we're transforming this kitchen into a real recipe for success.
Thanks for watching this episode of Today's Homeowner. And don't forget to like, comment, and hit the bell icon so that you'll be notified of new videos.
And be sure to click around and watch some more videos while you're here.